Hey, before we get into today's episode, if you're a podcast host or guest, listen up. I've produced over 200 podcast episodes and guested on 50 podcasts just in 2025 alone. And let me tell you, nothing grows your audience or builds trust faster than being in front of the right listeners. That's why I created my podcast tour offer. I'll help you map out your topics, strategize your message, and find you the most aligned podcasts and audiences to get you and your business in front of. So if you've ever thought, I just wish more eyes were on my work, this is your sign. Let's get you on a podcast tour. You can find all the details in the show notes. Just look for podcast tour. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, it's time to get a little vulnerable, but this episode is what I do differently. My top guesting mistakes from 2023. When I first started dabbling in podcast guesting, I was a few years into my podcast, but I was still looking at my podcast as this fun little thing I did on the side, a little passion project, and not as a vehicle to grow my business, to market my business, to work on my speaking, build authority, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was in a mind space of that, right? And I was just excited to be on podcasts. I like speaking on my own podcast, wanted to be on other podcasts, liked having guests on my podcast, was leaning in, which I don't fault, rip the Band-Aid off and get going. But I have a list of my top mistakes, what I would do differently. I'm going to tell you how you can do it differently and how it's going to be much better use of your time because I've done these reps. And so I can help you speed up your process so that your reps are even better than what mine were. But if you've been here a while, or if you haven't, I've guested on 50 podcasts in 2025 alone. This wasn't always as polished though. So in 2023, I was making mistakes and they were really costing me in the sense of confusing people, confusing potential leads, not bringing in leads, no new followers. And so I want to really share what those were because I do this completely differently now and you can just speed through this learning curve. So I'm going to present you the mistake and then I'll give you the flip of what you can do. So my first one is way too long of an intro. You get on a show and you're pumped, you're excited. Yes, I want to talk to this person. Then you're like, okay, who are you? Tell me about yourself. How did you get here? Who do you help and serve? And I went into sharing my life story because part of my podcast was sharing stories. So also in my head, I was like, this is so valuable. Someone's going to hear it. And I'm not saying it's not. When you're trying to be strategic and use guesting on podcasts as a way to grow a business, you can do a better job if you, focus on who you are now and who you help now. Give the Cliff Notes version of the rest of it, but it's not a time to share, your birth origin story. Speed it up. This is 60 to 90 seconds. And then you let the host ask you follow-up questions because they know their audience better than you do and they know what's going to be important to what their show is about. Second mistake, saying yes to any show. Early on, it just feels so exciting to be invited anywhere or to be told yes to when, you're presenting yourself. This just really can be a problem. So guessing on a show whose audience has nothing to do with what you offer, that's just a lot of noise. It's not visibility. It's not the right people. And those are really going to fall flat. And sometimes those are going to be the episodes where that host is I'm not going to air this because then they get done and they realize, yeah, that didn't fit my audience either. Or they air it and it just still flops because they shouldn't have aired it in the first place. But every yes costs you time and energy. Being intentional and making sure there's alignment with that show and what you're all about is important. So you can ask yourself, are the people listening to this show already looking for what I do? And if it's a no, then it's okay to pass. It's okay to say, I just want to make sure that this is a fit for both of us and either ask follow-up questions to confirm or figure out if the audience is actually right. But you can also just say it doesn't seem like it'll be a fit, right? You don't have to say yes to everything. Number 3, having a bad lead magnet. You could nail the interview, but then at the end, when it's time for the listeners that have listened to the whole episode and they're loving you, because that's a lot to devote to someone, and you don't give them a good place to go next, a place of value, of an easy yes, we're oh heck yeah, I want that, then that can really drop the ball. And now it does look like you don't have any results because they're just going to listen to you that day, take what you said, run with it maybe, or enjoy your conversation, but then forget about you. It's not likely that they're going to remember your name and then search for you later on. So having a place where people can go. So here's an example of mine mine. And I have an episode about this a month or two or so back of what makes a great lead magnet. But for example, real briefly, mine was about podcast guesting, like getting started. But a lot of those tips and that content that was in that downloadable, I already shared in the episode. So it's just like regurgitating the information. So I wasn't getting a lot of hits with that. I switched it to my free podcast matchmaking community now because the next step in the client journey, if they listen to the episode, they're like, heck yeah, I want to guest on podcast. That sounds amazing. I never thought of that. The next step is to go get booked on a podcast. So giving that quick win, giving the community is a space to go do that, to go make a connection with a host or with a guest and get them on your show or vice versa. And so that's the natural next step. So that's, you can think about like, what is that next step? Because that's the value and that's the easy yes, the easy win that they will sign up for. But if you don't have a lead magnet yet, I highly recommend one because you want to have one specific place to send people. The other thing could be having too many lead magnets. They might all be great, but per episode, have one. Don't share all of them. Too many choices, giving people too many options can lead to indecision and lack of action, and you don't want that. Number 4, letting the host guess your niche. Something that I do now is present speaking topics to the host for myself and my clients, and also prepping questions that fit my framework of connecting, shifting, and method that I map out episodes following that for my clients. So I do not just let the host, and people ask me, how do you make sure the host asks you these questions? Like, you can't really be pushy and be like, you have to, no, you don't. But a lot of the time you're just booking the show and you've not discussed a speaking topic at all. Maybe you've shared with the host like, hey, I'm a copywriter, and they're like, oh, amazing, let's have you on the show. But your expertise is in like email copy and funnels, and they ask you about like website copy and all this, right? And you never get to talk about your expertise. You never get to talk about the area in that big umbrella topic that you actually serve people and help people with. And that's why you have to have a speaking topic. And that's why you have as specific as possible speaking topics. So a host can say yes, and then know exactly what questions they would ask you. And you can also present some questions to them. They often in the intake form have a box that says ask for questions. And if they don't, they'll have a box that says, is there anything else you want me to know before we record? And you can put a few in there as well to prompt them to ask you the things that you want. And my last one, number 5, sharing too many tips in one episode. In 2023, I was so excited and I was like, oh, I hate when people gatekeep. I might still do, but I thought value was like give away as much information as possible. And I'm not shy about giving away information. Like, you can listen to my podcast here. There's tons and tons of information. You could literally take it and do a podcast here by yourself. The thing is though, not everyone wants to do that. Not everybody wants to DIY everything. But regardless, I was getting on these episodes and sharing 20 tips about a lot of stuff. And while yes, there's value in that, but the value that you can look at it's like, think about how they're going to feel when they're done listening. Or are they going to feel like, I can take action on this because these 1 or 2 things, I can do it today. I'm so empowered. Like, I'm going to make this happen. Or is it like 15, 20 things and they're like, I can't do all of that. So then I can't do any of that. And that's often how our brain works. There's 2 very different feelings when you get done listening to an episode. One is that you've been taught, well, there's a clear action step, a clear takeaway, and this is memorable and I feel empowered. And 2 is just like, yeah, no, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do any of this. And then also like hard to remember any of it because there's too much. So those are the 5 things I do different now and are super common when you're excited and you're diving in. Lean into that excitement. That is a good sign that this is a great platform for you to lean into and market and network and build your business. It's just, you can do it strategically and you can do it even better. So take this, run with it. And looking back, every single one of these mistakes, they came from the same place. They came from showing up without a strategy, and I was winging it and I was hoping that the opportunity would just magically work for me. And that's what so many of us do when we get on and do the interview, and it's like, gotta be a good thing, right? Getting on a podcast has gotta be a good thing as a speaking engagement. But without your topics and your intro being wildly long, no lead magnet, all of those things, being more intentional, being strategic before you say yes, before you pitch, before you hit record, that is going to be what explodes your business. That's what's going to make this next chapter of your business be night and day from what it used to be. So go ahead and book your tour with me. The link is in the show notes. Let's get this going. I'll send you 10 to 15 shows that are perfectly aligned with you. I'll lay out your speaking topics. I'll episode map things to talk about, as well as questions that hosts can ask you and a pitch template. I'll lay it all out and get it delivered to you within 2 to 5 days from you signing up. So this can be your best quarter yet in business if you let it. All right, see you next week. Hey, before you go, if you've ever wished podcast guesting or hosting felt a little easier, you're going to love this. I started a free podcast matchmaking community where hosts and guests can actually connect, swap shows, and find aligned conversations without all the cold pitching and chaos. It's totally free, it's super fun, and it's growing every day. So whether you're looking to grow your audience, get in front of the right people, or just finally get your message out there, come join us. You can find the link in the show notes to join the community.